Hello folks, the Y Guy here, and I do want to welcome you to my home. Please look me up on Facebook under the Y Guy, and on this video, YouTube, leave a thumbs up, thumbs down, subscribe maybe. And if you are going to comment because you disagree with me, please be polite about it. Thank you. The name of this video is called The Y Guy, Did Jesus Promote Ancient Pagan Mythology? Well, that's a strange question, isn't it, to be asking, and it almost sounds offensive, especially to the ears of most of Christianity. But let me explain. Everyone believes in some and practices some form of mythology, ancient pagan mythology. I mean, we got just the days of our week. And there's hundreds of things that Christians practice within the four walls, from lighting candles to celebrating Christmas and Easter and all that has its roots in ancient pagan mythology. But you know what? My opinion on it is, so what? Come on, think about it. No harm is being done. No one is being hurt by these practices, especially Christmas and Easter. But we do have those people who are kind of what I would call them more of the purists, and those who are somewhat self-righteous, who will judge people for celebrating various holidays and what have you, because they're paganistic. And yet those very same people who do that judgment call and show very little love towards their fellow beings, those very people practice, believe, and actually promote ancient pagan mythology worse than anyone else. And I'll explain it this way. Would it be offensive to them or to you as a listener for me to say, for Zeus so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son Hercules, that whosoever... Now, would that be offensive to you? Now, the response I'd get from most people within Christianity anyway would be, they'd be aghast that I would even consider doing that, saying that, and I'd say, but why? What was wrong with that? And their response would be something similar to, well, you substituted God and you put Zeus in his place, and you substituted Christ by putting Hercules in there. Those two people belong, those two come from ancient Greek, ancient pagan mythology. You shouldn't do that. And I said, but why not? You do that because you're going to send most people to Hades who don't agree with you. And Hades was the name of Zeus's brother. So why not include Zeus if you're going to include his brother? And the place that of the netherworld and the underworld that Hades resided was God over. They named it Hades. He named it Hades too. Well, according to mythology, you see. So not only are you elevating, and I don't want to get into elevating another god, there'd be no other gods before me. You see what I'm saying? You're promoting that. It's almost as if a third of your theology is, 2/3 is based on truth, and 1/3 of it is based on a complete lie, a pagan mythology. You see, so I'll get into it here in a minute, and we'll explain hell as well, and I'll prove to you that both of them, that both Hades and hell come from ancient pagan mythology. Now we know the history of the Greek mythology, so I'm not going to get into that. We've seen enough movies about it. And people say, but it's in my Bible. Both are in my Bible. As an example, in the New American, 10 Hades, 13 hells. NIV, 5 Hades, 13 hells. Revised Standard, 9 Hades, 13 hell. But yet in the King James Version, 0 Hades. Ooh, but 54 hells. Okay, that must make them, the King James, even more accurate, right? If that were so, then why does the new King James Version have Hades in it 11 times and hell 32? See, right there off the bat, it should bring up a red flag that something is askew, something is wrong here, folks. And it just is. So here we've got 32 and 11, which is what, 43? And so 43, even if you combine the two, it comes out 43 times, but yet in the King James, hell was mentioned 54 times. What happened to those other 11 hells? Something must have happened to them, okay? Because there was no Hades before. I mean, you're getting my drift here. Some people will say, well, it's all one and the same. Hades and hell, one and the same. No, they're not. They come from two complete different languages, two complete different cultures, and two completely different pagan practices. You know, oh, but they all come from the word Sheol in Hebrew. Really? Now we're talking a third different culture. And Sheol simply means death or grave. So if I'm not allowed to change the name of God to Zeus and the name of Jesus to Hercules, why are you allowed then to change the word that simply means death or grave, which is what Sheol means, sometimes pit, which is a grave? If you're allowed to do that and change death and grave into an ancient pagan belief of Hades or an ancient pagan belief of hell, then why can't I change the name of God or Jehovah to Zeus? It sounds reasonable to me, doesn't it? Now, I'm being a smart aleck on purpose, but you've got to get my point here. All right? Now, yes, the original King James Version must be accurate according to some. I have this friend of mine who was in law enforcement. He still is, actually. And he teaches interrogation classes, teaches officers how to interrogate people. And and I called him one day and I said, you know, Rich, I said, I just don't get it. You know, according to what you've told me, you have people write stuff down over and over again, the same testimony over and over again, and then sometimes you bring in an interrogator to ask them the same questions, the same ones over and over again, and if you don't get the results, you bring in a different interrogator and they ask the same questions over and over again, and if you get different answers from what has been written down or what has been verbally spoken, then if they're not consistent, that's a key word, if they're not consistent, then you know something is false, something is wrong, and they must be lying. And he said, yeah, you pretty much got that right. And I said, well, the King James has hell mentioned 54 times, and none of the other Bibles agree with it. And not only that, they don't even agree with each other. So don't you think that there's a discrepancy there that requires further investigation on your part? And his answer to me was, well, no, the King James, since it mentions hell the most, it has to be the one that's accurate. He didn't even follow his own guidance. Anyway, that's why we're not friends anymore, because he broke it off. Anyway, because of what I'm saying right now, probably, along these lines anyway, my paradigm shift. Well, I'm only going to scratch the surface. I already hit the history of Hades. We don't have to go too dig into that. Everyone knows that's Greek mythology, okay? Now let's, I'm going to just scratch the surface just a little bit on the history of hell and why it ended up in your King James Bible, folks. And now right around 9 BC, or I should say a possibility of why, all right? I'm no authority of ancient history. I'm really not. But right around 9 BC all the way to 300 AD, there was this group of people, the Germanic people. Germanic? Yeah, I said that right. The ancient Germans. They hung out an awful lot with the Scandinavians of their area. It was all part of Scandinavia back then. Okay, and you know, they were allied with a lot of the various tribes of Scandinavia and the Germanic, and they had a similar belief, okay? Not similar, it was exactly the same belief when it came to the netherworld or the underworld, okay, of ancient pagan mythology. They had the same belief of this goddess. Her name was Hel. Isn't that interesting? It's more than coincidence, folks. Her name was Hel, H-E-L, single L, all right? And it sounds the same way, too, okay, pronounced the same way. And these ancient Germanic people invaded Italy and occupied Italy on and off for almost 300 years, or possibly 300 plus years. I don't know, somewhere right around there. Like I said, 9 BC to 300 AD. Now, when you invade a country, you're going to influence their culture, are you not? And when you occupy a country, you're going to influence their beliefs, are you not? Is that just the nature of things? And not only that, they're going to influence you too, especially for hundreds of years. All right? Now, it's not coincidence then that 440 AD, the Latin Vulgate was produced, where they took manuscripts. Actually, they took the Greek Septuagint. The Greek Septuagint is the Old Testament written in Greek. The reason why is because Alexander the Great, right around 250 BC, invaded Jerusalem, took a bunch of people over to Greece, and after a while they couldn't read Hebrew any longer, so the society decided to translate their Hebrew scriptures into Greek. And did you know that hell was never mentioned in those manuscripts? Okay, then the Latin people who wrote the Latin Vulgate then took that that book, the Septuagint, and then they the scriptures, and then they took a bunch of letters and stuff that they considered was of the apostles and what have you, of the Greek letters that were copies of copies of copies of copies of copies of letters, and various things like that, that were passed around in Jerusalem and where have you. And then they took those, and by the way, in those letters, hell was never mentioned, ever. They took both of them, combined them together, made one of the first Bibles called the Latin Vulgate, and they put hell in there 111 times when it was never there before. Now, how did that happen? Okay? So, anyway, right there, something's off, folks. Okay? Again, Jesus promoted either ancient pagan mythology or something is off. All right? Now, okay, let me continue here. I was getting ready to chase a rabbit here. The King James Bible, if you say that is so accurate, and it mentions hell 54 times, and it was directly translated from the Latin Vulgate, which said hell 111 times, mentioned hell that often, what happened to all those hells again? Okay, if it's so accurate, why didn't the King James have hell in there 111 times? If we're going to be consistent, remember that word? Okay, I'm coming to a close here. But it's in my Bible. I had this friend, Kurt, a friend of mine, a preacher, that one time around the dinner table, he told me, he goes, Jesus warned us of hell more than anyone else in all of the New Testament. If I knew then what I knew now, I'd have grabbed him around the collar of his neck and pulled his face right close to mine. And I said, no, he didn't, Kurt. Jesus didn't speak Latin. I wouldn't even have to get into the ancient Latin pagan mythology of their beliefs and where they got the word hell from. I wouldn't even have to get into that. It's simple logic. Jesus didn't speak Latin, so he would never use the word hell. Now, let me back up just a little bit and get back to the Greek Septuagint just a little bit. The reason why hell wasn't ever mentioned is because Jews in the Hebrew language, they never had a place for another world, underworld. Okay? It wasn't part of their belief system. They didn't believe in any kind of a hell, Hades. Of course, they wouldn't believe in a pagan mythology, but they didn't have any word for that. The best they could do would say unseen, or, a pit, grave. That's it. That's all they had. And so they used the word Sheol for that. All right? Of an unknown factor in their beliefs. So, and Jesus was a Jew. So Jesus, of course, wouldn't use a word like Hades or hell, because he didn't speak Greek and he didn't speak Latin. I know I already said something similar to that. So anyway, folks, you got to rethink these things just a little bit. Now, the early Christians, the very early Christians, the very first Christians, before it even got over to Rome, they were Jewish. And again, as I said, Jews didn't believe in hell. Jesus didn't believe in hell, so they certainly would never speak such words. That's why I know that those words were never in the Septuagint, and the earliest Christians would never put those in their letters. Put that in their letters, okay? So did Jesus promote ancient pagan mythology? Well, he must have. Or those words are horribly mistranslated. Please investigate this for yourself, and whatever you read, whatever you hear, whatever you say, whatever you teach, whatever I'm saying on this video, judge it. Judge it by does it endorse the character of God? God is love. Does it elicit more trust in you that God has things taken care of? Can you trust God more from whatever you believe? And does your belief, or whatever I'm saying, does it promote, does it endorse the fruit of the Holy Spirit, which is love, joy, peace, meekness, kindness, gentleness, self-control? Does your belief, in this pagan belief in Hades or hell, does it cause you to love people more? Love God more? Does this pagan belief in hell give you joy? Joy knowing that countless billions are going to Hades or hell? How about peace? Does it give you peace knowing countless people are going? You getting my point? Think about this. Thanks for viewing.